The Texans may be traumatized by what's been happening to them in New Jersey. I'm Jason Bristol here in the KHOU 11 newsroom breaking down another loss to the New York Jets. This time, 21-13 is the final. And as always, we're looking for your comments, your reaction to this game, which just wrapped up. The Texans falling now to 6-3. And this game, coming into this game, when you looked at the opponent, you looked at the injuries, you looked at the day of the week, it just didn't feel good coming into this football game. When you survey local sports talk radio and you take a informal poll of fans around town, there was a lot of worried Texans fans, media about this game and how it was going to turn out. And it turns out those concerns were warranted for a number of different reasons. I think first and foremost, the offensive line play. 8 sacks of C.J. Stroud in this game. 8 sacks. And I just pulled up the numbers. It was almost a franchise record for quarterback sacks allowed in a game. The team record is 10, in which they allowed against Jacksonville back in 2017. Way back in 2002, hello David Carr, the Texans allowed 9 sacks to the San Diego Chargers, and now you have an 8-sack game. C.J. Stroud tasting a lot of that turf at MetLife Stadium. Just wasn't good. Didn't feel good going in. And it feels even worse on the way out because now you have potentially more injuries to contend with. Will Anderson Jr., the ankle, didn't return to the game. Kenyon Green, his issue, health-wise, he was out. Kendrick Green came in to replace him, which I know a lot of people were looking forward to. It was an up and down game for Kendrick Green, I think. But again, when you look at everything which happened here, I don't think a lot of people felt good going into this game, and those concerns were warranted. So let me pull up our stream here so we can talk about this game. There we are. So let's get your reactions. If you had one word, and I see Pamela. Pamela's already weighing in. Pamela's already weighing in with a word to describe what she saw. Terrible. Yep, terrible. When you look at these stats, they line up with this word, terrible. C.J. Stroud, 11 of 30 for 191. And yes, I think at times C.J. was holding on to the football longer than he should. But again, sacked 8 times, a quarterback rating of 59.2. Joe Mixon was very good in the first half. Finished with 106 yards. What do you have, like 101 at halftime? 91 at halftime. Tank Dell is now your number 1 receiver with Stephon Diggs out. He goes 6 catches, 126. Robert Woods, 2 catches for 44 yards. You knew guys would have to step up to replace Nico Collins' hamstring, Stephon Diggs' torn ACL. And Tank Dell certainly did that. But some of these other guys, the numbers aren't great. And certainly a lot of that could be tied to the fact that the offensive line could not protect C.J. Stroud. Pete says, how do you lose to the most terrible team in the NFL? Well, I think the last part of that sentence is your answer. It's the NFL. And what do they always say? Any given Sunday, any team. I mean, the Patriots beat the Jets. You crushed the Patriots, you being the Texans. That's the way it is in the NFL, especially when you consider short week, injuries, and then obviously some of the issues we've seen on this offensive line. Michael weighing in as well. With pathetic. That works as well for a one word. I'm trying to think of my one word. But again, when you look at these stats, pathetic is certainly right up there. Michael says no excuses. Yeah, I think that certainly professional coaches and players, they're going to say there's no excuses, but there's clearly an issue at left guard. Clearly an issue. Because you saw that in the last game when Kenyon Green was replaced by Jarrett Patterson, and the only reason, as we all know, Jarrett Patterson is not in because he's in concussion protocol. And, you know, you look for a silver lining. Anybody check the schedule next week? Only one of the best teams in football. Sunday Night Football, Detroit Lions, coming to NRG on Sunday, November 10th. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys, which is a Monday night game at Dallas. Then you get back to a 2-game division swing with the Titans and then the Jaguars at home. Shea weighing in. Another P word, painful. So we have terrible, pathetic, painful. And we may want to hang on to these words because you may need them after the next game as well, especially the way the Detroit Lions have been playing football right now. Aaron Rodgers, a lot of people saying, oh, Aaron Rodgers is washed. Maybe. But he was 22 of 32 for 211 yards and 3 touchdowns. And there were a couple of throws there, more than a couple, that Aaron Rodgers looked like Aaron Rodgers. Breece Hall, running back, 15 carries, 74 yards. And Corley was the dude who had the almost touchdown run and dropped the football. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand these guys. And you thought, okay, maybe the tide is turning here. The Texans have caught a break. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Bobby weighing in as well. With an embarrassing. This New York receiving corps, Devontae Adams, 7 catches, 91 yards and a touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 9 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that phenomenal one-handed grab. But that's the kind of production you expect from the Texans and their receiving room. But right now, that room is a lot smaller when it comes to talent. Rick said this was coming. They had been winning by chance. I agree with you on that, Rick, because when you looked at the number of close games that this team was playing and winning, I don't want to say the luck was going to run out, but the offensive coach got to go, and that's that. Certainly Bobby Slowick has not had a good run thus far. Remember, this guy was being courted this last coaching cycle as a head coaching candidate. I do think a lot of the issues up front are playing a role in all of this. However, when you're the offensive coordinator, you have to consider all of that. You just can't keep trying to do what you do because this is what we do. They clearly don't have the personnel to do what they're used to doing. I did like seeing CJ roll out a little bit, go away from the pressure, had a nice ball to Tank Dell. I know you can't do that on every single play, but that was smart football given what we've seen from this offensive line. Ricky says they've been lucky. Yes, they've been lucky. They've been lucky to get to 6 wins. 6-3, and I think they're also lucky that they play in the AFC South, because half of the division is not playoff caliber. I say half the division because I think if the Colts had any type of quarterback play, it'd be a different story right now. Amanda says the loss is not surprising. You are right. There are times that CJ held on to the football for too long, but our O-line is just awful. We've been here before. The only bright spot on for our offense has been Mixon, but that was non-existent in the second half. Can't beat the Lions looking like this. You are exactly right. Exactly right. I agree with you, Amanda. And I think CJ will say, I'm a playmaker, and I've got to hang in there for as long as I can to throw the football. But yeah, there were a couple of times, I think when he goes back and watches the tape, he's going to say, my bad. I mean, CJ's that kind of guy. And I think when he sees the tape, he certainly felt it. He felt the pressure. But I think when he sees it from the coaching film, the coaching video, he'll see, okay, that was my bad. Lisa says they were an embarrassment. I thought the secondary has not played well all year. They've been lucky so far, and everyone is on to the O-line, and that is terrible. Doing the same thing over and over again is insanity, and that's where we are at. Man, it is. It kind of shows you the state of Houston Texans football right now, that we can get these kind of comments when you have 6 wins and 3 losses. But the standard is so much higher because of DeMeco Ryans, almost Coach of the Year. C.J. Stroud, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Will Anderson Jr., Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then when you push your chips all in, essentially, in the offseason by signing Danielle Hunter, adding Stephon Diggs. So that's the place we're at right now. And maybe the Texans, I don't want to say peaked a year early, and maybe that all these expectations were too high going into this season, because, and I look back at our baseball analyst, Jeremy Booth, who, for him, rookie seasons are nice, but what's really telling about a player, and I think it applies to a lot of sports, or maybe even all sports, that second year is often very telling. Let's look at some more comments here. Let's see. Bobby says Slowick needs to spread the offense out. Why have all those defensive bodies lined up on top of a terrible offensive line? I agree. And I know he tried to get creative by sending C.J. Stroud into the end zone on that gadget play, but all I could think of was, oh my gosh, don't get C.J. hurt over a play like that. Let's look at some of the defensive statistics. I mean, Danielle Hunter had 1 tackle, 1 pass defensed. Jalen Petrie has been really good when it comes to applying pressure. Did have a pick 6, got burned badly on a play in this game, slipped. I think that had also something to do with the move. Neville Hewitt, 8 tackles. Kamari Lassiter, rookie, showed it at times. Eric Murray, Totoa, had 2 tackles for a loss. Derek Stingley, the numbers are always going to be a little short for Stingley because a lot of teams aren't going to throw his way. Mike says they were disgusting. And what happened to our kicker? I don't understand him at all anymore. Is he hurt? And is he just not saying, or what? Sometimes when you get to a place like MetLife Stadium, the wind can swirl in weird ways. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but it's one thing to kick inside NRG. It's another to be outside in elements that I don't want to say you're not used to, but are not the norm for you. I'm not making excuses, but you're right. It was not a good day for for Kaimi Fairbairn either. So Mike says disgusting. So we have terrible, pathetic, painful, embarrassing, and disgusting. Let's see if we have any more comments here of people weighing in. But again, it doesn't get any easier, folks. That's the troubling part. Yes, the Dallas Cowboys have been all over the place. But again, in a league which you never know what's going to happen from week to week, I don't think you can automatically put in a W for the Texans in Dallas. And let's not forget, the Jets were favored in this game. They were the favorite. Let's see here if I've got some more comments. April, keeping with our theme. Horrible. Horrible. Now, one piece of good news is because you played on Thursday night, you now have a few extra days of rest, which will be good for one Will Anderson Jr., who is such an important part of this defense, arguably the most important cog in this defense. Joe Mixon, again, great first half and then didn't really see much of him. Daniel says, new offensive coordinator, please. I don't think that's going to happen. Don't think that's going to happen. But clearly, some things need to be revised. You're not going to be sandblasting the game plan here because of who you have at quarterback. But there are some things that certainly need to be fixed. Let me see if I can get the game book because I'm curious how many carries Joe Mixon had in that second half. Noah says this team is going nowhere. Every team is a favorite against the Texans. I don't necessarily believe that they're going nowhere. There have been plenty of Super Bowl champions, and I'm not saying the Texans are there, but there have been plenty of Super Bowl champions who've hit a rough spell, who've had this rough stretch of games, a patch where things did not go well, and they were able to turn it around. I would argue nearly every Super Bowl champion in the past how many years, they've all had a situation or a stretch of games where things looked terrible, pathetic, painful, embarrassing, disgusting, and to their fan base, and it's all relative, right? And they were able to get back on track. We'll see if these Texans can do it. Mandy says, protect our quarterback. That is job one. That is job one for this team. Jay says we played in first gear, no hustle. Let's see. Mandy says, protect our quarterback. What is so hard about that? I saw your second post there, Mandy. Here's the thing about the Texans and the offensive line, and I've been saying this now for a year and a half. It's not like they haven't tried to address it. There are 3 first-round draft picks on that offensive line. You've made trades. You've drafted a guy in the second round. So it's not like they just haven't really paid attention to it. They have clearly made an effort. Now, whether that effort and the execution and the payoff is happening, but it's not something that they've just said, whatever, we'll throw out whatever in front of CJ. They have made an investment in the offensive line. Kenyon Green, at this point, it's not going well. Not going well for a guy who I believe you traded up for in that first round a few years ago. Laramie Tunsil is still one of the better left tackles. I mean, certainly he's paid like the best, but he's still one of the better. Daniel says Aaron Rodgers had a better play call for that touchdown. Judith says Nico is coming back. That is a big, big deal. However, if no one's protecting CJ, that's hard. the most important guy that we've seen on this offense thus far is Joe Mixon, number 28. He is the most important guy when it comes to getting this offense in gear, aside from C.J. Stroud. So your most important playmaker, if you will. Tina says, throw the dang ball. I assume she means when you're under pressure, get rid of it. Aaron Rodgers had a better play call for that touchdown. Yeah, it was not good. But listen, it wasn't good last year against the Jets. C.J. Stroud hurt in that game. I believe Nico Collins also was injured in that game. And I haven't looked, and I can pull them up right now. I'm curious to see how much the stats from that game resemble this game. I mean, it was 30-6 last year. 30-6. And you weren't facing Aaron Rodgers either. You were facing Zach Wilson. In that game, C.J. Stroud was sacked 4 times. Obviously left early with the concussion. Davis Mills came in, went 1 for 5. Lame is a word that Noah is coming up with. Lame. Let's see, what else do we have here? Paul says expected. You know, Paul, you may be onto something with that, which is what I kind of led off with here, that coming into this game, and not to go on and on and on, but I led off by saying, listen, coming into this game, you looked at the injury situation, you looked at the opponent, you looked at the day of the week, and you looked at some of the issues this team has. It did not feel good. I don't think very few, if any, people felt good going into this matchup. And you see the result. Again, 30-6 was the final last year, and now 21-13. The Texans have just sent out an email here. They send us out an email with post-game notes and the such. My guess is the quarterback sacks will not be listed. The Jets now lead this all-time series 8-3. They held Aaron Rodgers to 32 passing yards in the first half, his lowest output in a first half in his career, minimum 10 attempts. And then in the second quarter, the Texans had that 14-play, 98-yard scoring drive. That is the longest scoring drive for the Texans since November 8th, 2020. Kevin says, same thing every week with the play calling and the offensive line playing like crap. Was there a wide receiver run? Did I see? I didn't see that, but typically that is part of the game plan. I'm not sure if that was in tonight's game. I was watching, but I wasn't watching every single play. Maybe because they thought, well, we can't afford to get any more wide receivers hurt. So Stanley says, Scott Stanley says, as predicted. I think that goes along with as expected. So again, when you look at all this, it was a bad night. And again, Noah says, thanks, Jason, for this live. I already let off steam. Good. I'm glad we can provide that public service. Maybe you'll feel better should you need to go to work tomorrow, or if you have to work tomorrow. You've gotten it out now, and now you can approach Friday like a normal day. Mandy, thanks for doing this. Yes, no problem. No problem. Let's see. Any other notes? This is interesting. Tank Dell now joins Andre Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Will Fuller as the only Texans wide receivers to reach the 1,000-yard receiving mark total through their first 2 seasons. Okay. Joe Mixon is also joining Arian Foster as the only two players in franchise history to run for 100 yards in 4 straight games. So, hey, if you're looking for positives, there's some positives, but there's not a lot of them after this game. Not a lot of them. And of course, as some of you have pointed out, and we mentioned earlier, now you face one of the best teams in football, the Detroit Lions, on Sunday Night Football. I think a lot of these teams now have the blueprint or a blueprint when it comes to facing C.J. Stroud, and it's to bully that offensive line. Bully the offensive line. Now, the Lions, they are facing the Packers on Sunday, so that's a huge game for them. That's a rivalry game. That's a playoff-type preview game. So that's what you got. We've been going for how long here? About 26 minutes. So everybody, if you have any candy left, I suppose now you could have a few more pieces before heading to bed and then save the rest for the weekend so we can just, get rid of the thought and the feeling of this game. But that's what happens. That's what happens when you go into a game like this. And as expected, predicted, embarrassing, painful, pathetic, terrible, they're all right here. In the end, it's a 21-13 loss to the New York Jets, and now the Houston Texans are 6-3 with a battle against the Lions on the horizon. So once again, I appreciate all of you staying up late and talking football with us here in the KHOU 11 newsroom. Once again, the final 21-13 Texans fall. That's it here from KHOU 11. Until next time, have a great weekend, everybody.